understanding that Frank Dembowski will be presenting that, right, Frank? And you have 15 minutes. So I'm just
Okay.
going to turn it over to you. I'm going to set the timer on and welcome you to present the topic.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, members of council and the viewing public. I have a PowerPoint, which I'll bring up in a moment. About a few weeks ago, I presented to City Council on behalf of the City Administration, the Administrative Manual. And the Administrative Manual is a group of policies, internal policies, and procedures. In that presentation, I mentioned there are going to be some new policies being implemented for 2022. And the biggest, or the most boldest, I would say, or the most newest policy is the Language Access Program. And I wanted to set a little bit of time separately for this specific policy that I'm about to go over. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go to the PowerPoint. Let's do this here. Give me a second. Sure, do this. I'm going to share screen. Okay. I believe everybody sees what I see. The language access policy. Excellent. Good. I got this down. Good. Good. Excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to start off with is I'm actually going to jump to the fourth. Let's see if we can do this here. The fourth screen. Before I get into the language access policy, in order to understand the purpose of it, let's take a really quick, brief, some data about our city and the demographics in our city. So, languages spoken at home. This is based on the U.S. Census, but the American Community Survey of 2019. This is important to note this because if you remember when you took the census, there really wasn't a lot of questions. So the American Community Survey is a spinoff of the census, and it's a whole nother process. It does sampling and asks a whole series of different questions. So this data that I'm going over is from 2019, and it's as reflective as possible from the results of 2020. So this is the most updated information we have in regards to the languages spoken at home. So citizens 18 years or over. So per this census survey, there's over 57,000 individuals over 18 years of age. Now, speaks only English is, sorry about that, speaks only English is a little bit over 30,000 individuals over 18 years of age. That's 52.9% of the population. Speaks a language other than English, over 27,000 individuals identified themselves as that category at 47%. Individuals who speak Spanish are 25,000, over 25,000, which is 44%. And other languages spoken besides Spanish, it's a little less than 2,000 at 2.7%. So the reason I share these statistics is this gives us a backdrop on our demographics and the residents that we serve every day in regards to language and how we communicate with our residents. So looking at this data, this would suggest that we may want to take a look at on how we communicate with our residents. So let me go back to the first, I'm going to go back to the second slide. So let me explain a little further the purpose. So I showed you a little bit about the demographics and the residents that we serve. Let's go over briefly of what is a language access policy? What is the purpose? What does that really mean, right? So the purpose of having a language access program is to serve an increasingly diverse population, which Reading has. It is critical and imperative that the city has to be able to communicate effectively to all our residents, regardless of language proficiency. And the result of having poor communication with our residents threatens to undermine the quality of services across city functions. And I know that we've had these conversations over the last months and couple of years on how we can communicate in different ways and more effectively with our residents. So the language access program, we can address some of those concerns. So I went over the purpose. We want to increase our effectiveness to communicate with our residents. And the data I showed showing that not every resident has English language proficiency. So talked about data, the purpose, we're going to get to the policy. So what kind of policy would the city embark on to be able to address some of these things and how to move forward? So what's important is that the city takes reasonable steps to ensure persons with limited English proficiency. And that's important to know that. So just because you may be able to, an individual can speak English doesn't always mean it's what level of proficiency, right? So it's important to provide people who are limited English proficiency, be able to allow them meaningful access to city services and to receive information at no cost to themselves and receive information in a timely manner. Once again, we in the city of Reading need to serve our residents, and we need to be able to communicate efficiently. So it will be the responsibility of the city to ensure that language barriers are overcome. As such, the city will take necessary actions to inform the public, especially, it said LEP persons, but that's limited English proficiency individuals, of making sure they are aware of all the services offered by the city. So that we went over the purpose to policy. We've already gone over the slide here about the demographic, and it gives us a feel for our residents. So what does this mean if we have a policy and a purpose? What responsibilities may exist, right? So there's different responsibilities for different parts of the city government. So we'll start off with the broadness of the city's responsibility. So to implement a plan like this, it's important that the plan reiterates the city's policy and expectations on language access. And it outlines how the managing director will ensure the language access and making sure we provide resources across the administration. And once again, I'm still pretty broad here because it's like, okay, what does that really mean? And we'll break that down shortly. What does that actually mean? What are the expectations and the responsibilities of the managing director? And the reason to be the managing director is the one who as we already know, but for the viewing public who may not be familiar, the managing director really runs the day-to-day administrative operations of the city. He's really the operations director. So everything kind of comes down through him when it talks about operations. So we get a little bit more detail here about what the managing director would do if we would adopt a language access program. The managing director will be responsible to provide training and to monitor the effectiveness of this policy, and to check and to evaluate them annually with the department directors. And so the managing director will be the one most responsible to implement it, but it's also responsibility as we boil it down to department directors, because every department has a different process in regards to the services that they provide. So we would develop a plan that's departmental focused, and there will be a person of designate a person of main point of contact for each department. So when you look at department directors, we're looking at a point person for each department who would take the responsibility to ensure that this plan is implemented and properly fixed. So we keep talking about this plan. What is this plan? We keep talking, so I'm going to get to that in a minute. So we talked about responsibilities, purpose, the role, but what exactly is a plan? What's a plan supposed to look like? What are we doing with that? Well, when you have a language access program, you have to have a criteria. You have to have this thought out very well, and you have to decide what services are you actually trying to provide that somebody with limited English proficiency would need to know about. So we have to have a process. You can't just have everything translated in a different language of everything. You have to come up with a standard, a policy with something that's very practical and meaningful. So the federal government has a guidelines. It's called the 4-factor analysis. And basically, you have to, when you develop a plan, you have to use this 4-factor analysis to determine what do you translate, what do you provide, what is reasonable, what is actually maybe legally required, and what would be beneficial for the residents. So with those questions, the answers come from the 4-factor analysis. And basically, it talks about the number of LEP individuals, the frequency of the services or the contact that would come with the program, and what resources would be available. So, all right, we talked about a plan, but how would you move forward with such a plan? The first step is the mayor would issue an executive order saying we were going to develop a language access program, and that we're going to come up with a policy that the city administration will fulfill, making sure our residents have access to the services and information they need, regardless of English language proficiency. But what we're going to do is we just started a process. We authorized a bid that just went out last week, I think. And Jamar, I don't think he's on the call, but we did have it out for bid right now for a third-party consulting or individuals who are experts in developing these plans. A language access plan is a common functionality that many large municipalities have done throughout the country. So there are individuals and experts out there, and we're looking to solicit for bids and to see if we can get somebody on board to help develop a plan that's thought out properly, that is set up in stages, that's realistic and reasonable, and to understand what do we have to provide in what language. So when that bid's authorized and council approves in that whole process that we normally go through, the contractor or the consultant will develop this language access plan, and then this plan will be the responsibility of the mayor and managing director to implement the plan. So that's where we're looking toward. Once we have a contractor consultant on board, there'll be a lot more details. I know this sounds a little bit broad, but the idea is our goal here is to make sure our city residents and the city are properly communicating critical information on vital services to our residents, and we have that line of communication because that's critical if we are to be successful in administering the city. So that's the presentation that I have this evening. Certainly, if there's questions and if further comments, I'm open to the questions, comments, and to really turn it over back to council to, to see where you would like to proceed with this.
Thank you, Frank. Certainly we know that there are barriers to language and accessibility issues that we have all seen, sometimes even just in our neighborhoods. The accessibility is critical. I'm going to open up to council. Council members, just some basic questions that you might have on what Frank presented this evening in a preliminary approach. I see Marcia, I see Johanny. I don't know who had their hand up first, and then I see Strat.
Okay, so Marcia first. No, Johanny's was.
Okay.
That's okay.
So you two decide, and don't forget about Strat.
Marcia, if you want to go first, go for it. It's okay.
Okay. So first of all, I think this is very timely and absolutely essential. Communication is the key to public engagement in government. So I think when we do this, we need to be able to make sure that it's not only done language specific, but understanding how people understand government. Because just to translate is not necessarily going to be good communication. And that is also including English too, is that I think we need to be very mindful of how people understand information. And I think we also need to be very aware of what people understand verbally versus in writing, because a lot of the language that we use that's written, even if it's translated, either English or Spanish, is not understandable. So we have to make sure that we're language competent. And there is some good information I hope the administration uses, culturally linguistic appropriate services. I will send the link. It has how you are able to apply those principles to anything that you do regarding communication.
Thank you. That'd be very helpful if you could send that link either through the chat or email. Thank you very much for that.
Go ahead, Johanny.
So is this exclusive to residents, or are we utilizing this also for hiring purposes?
The purpose of the language access program is our relationship with our residents, from the administration to the residents. So developing a program that we're able to communicate directly with our residents regardless of English proficiency. So this is meant for us working with our residents, connecting there. Maybe if you can help elaborate a little bit on that relationship that you're suggesting between employees, maybe I can answer that better. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I know that, as a whole, we've always struggled with hiring, right? So if we have qualified candidates, but they struggle with English, perhaps, and we have this language access plan, I never want to miss out on an opportunity to hire qualified, good employees because there might be a limited language, English proficiency, if you will. So that's why I was just curious if this is just to build, sustain, and improve our relationship with residents, or to also just open up or provide access to more people to be able to apply for work for the city.
Right, and at a point well taken. It does take a look also from an employer to employee relations. Also, one of the things I think it's important, and just because maybe some of our employees may be able to be proficient or they believe they're proficient in another language, doesn't always make them the ideal translator. We really got to make sure when we do translation that we're doing it properly, because actually sometimes there's a false sense of we think we're communicating with our residents, but we may be miscommunicating so we got to, what we're looking at is employees and programs when we do translation and we do communicate with the public, that person is actually certified or has, because let's put it this way. I can speak a little bit of different language and I can speak to my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters, and we all understand each other. But that doesn't mean I'll be able to communicate really efficiently, maybe outside of my group into the general public. And a lot of times the work that we do, it's not easy to translate because municipal government, we've got some really awkward words and terminologies that don't translate really well. So this language, we want to make sure we're communicating effectively. And we want to make sure that our employees who do communicate either in English or another language, that we're communicating properly. So it kind of goes in what you're saying, Johanny, in the sense that with the employees, it could branch into what you suggested also on our hiring and looking at that relationship and how to communicate all around. So it's when we develop this plan, we can build that into the component of the evaluation. So I wrote a note here. So when we do have a bid spec, that we can include that.
And I share this because obviously, we want to maximize on the opportunity, especially if we're considering hire some or contracting someone to create a plan. It makes sense that we capture everything. I know in the past, I've come across businesses that they actually train employees in English for the job that they're like, for example, let's take Georgia Mushrooms. I know that there's a business that I know, a woman that I've spoken with, that Georgia will hire her and she creates a plan to train these individuals on how to communicate in English for their specific job requirement, if that makes sense. So just some things to consider. I mean, there's just so much flexibility and creativity what we can do as it relates to language.
Yes.
Thank you. Strat.
Yes, I'm the old timer here, and I can talk about something that the majority of the people here never heard of. There was a plane like this many, many, many years ago, but it wasn't handled properly. This plan was to educate new people that were moving into this community, not just to move in here, but for working, like Joanna says. But what took place, individuals were appointed to take these people under their wing and teach them this and teach them that. But this became, let's call it a racket. People needed people to work at the textile or Berkshire knitting mills. They would bring their own people in to interview people that were looking for a position, and they hired people from their background, not other people. That was stopped. That was the first agencies that were told to do crap like this. We need to be careful. If we're going to have a plan, we better find out who is going to be handling this plan and make sure that they understand there's more than one other language other than English that has to be broke down for people that are coming into this community looking for work and everything else. Please, let's be careful and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Strat. So just, Donna, I want to make sure, did you have any comments or questions before we close the topic?
No, I mean, I'm curious to see how this all unfolds, and I appreciate Frank's presentation. I think it's more complex than any of us can imagine it is. I mean, you go to Strat's point of view of the one-on-ones with people, in different government and businesses when the primary old language was Pennsylvania German versus English. Those were sometimes difficult, and then as the different ethnicities and nationalities moved in, Italian, Polish, everyone else, everything had sometimes a mentoring kind of thing, or you were pushed because you just had to learn these things. This is good. This is important for us in communication, but historically, sometimes we have communication issues just among us between internally in government.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you have to consider the perspective, but, I'm happy to see this occur. And, the more people understand what's going on and more inclusive, the more involved they'll be. So let's go for it.
Thank you. Marcia, final comment?
Yes, and just some guidance that I've learned through some trainings I've attended, that it's important to do the assessment, to be able to look at where you are as far as the standards, and then to be able to set up groups. You look at where you're at, how you're going to improve it, and be honest about what's working and what's not. So monthly meetings where you look at what are the things that you're doing to be able to move ahead? What are some of the barriers? It's always a good way to be able to keep a barometer on, how this is being implemented, because it isn't all easy. And there's a lot of changes even within one ethnicity to another about how language is understood, what words are used. So I'm glad the city's taking this up, but I think we just need to give ourselves an opportunity to be on a learning curve as we move ahead. And I liked a lot of the suggestions that came from other council members that, how we need to recognize that all people aren't going to be English proficient, and how we need to build on their capacity rather than letting language be a barrier.
Thanks, Marcia. Strat, final comment?
Yes, I thought of something. I should have brought it up when I was talking about these people that are looking for positions. Let's talk about the people that are immigrants coming to this country and coming to this town, and they have children. Okay? These children now are placed in a school. And this actually happened where this child was taken to a school. He spoke no English whatsoever, and he needed to learn English. Okay? Now, the people that were doing the assignments, they were told several times he speaks no English. He was put in a class where the people in that class spoke a different language than English, and they were trying to teach him that language until the boy went home and told his parents, who contacted someone from within the school district where this was taking place, and there was a heck of a ruckus about this. That child was taken out of that classroom and put in a class where he could learn another language. Not the language that they wanted to teach him, but a language of this country, okay? That kid ended up graduating from Albright College. He graduated from up at Reading High as second or third student in that class, and he's now a doctor. And I think somebody on the board there knows who I'm talking about. But we need to be careful who we hire to handle this program. Thank you.
Thanks, Strat. I think your statement is valid in the selection of the contractor. As we wrap up this topic, Frank, thank you for addressing this. I'd like to know what other cities we've looked at who are modeling effective language access policy. I'd like to know a little bit more about the cost, and I know that will come with the contractor, because as you've noted, you said this would be free service in terms of the government providing the accessibility of the business of the government to the constituents of Reading. What's that going to cost, right? What does that actually look like? I'm a little curious as to the oversight of the program internally and the structure you laid out. I know we have a communications director, as well as a managing director, the department heads, etc. So I'll be curious to see how the administration fleshes out that, which will be critical. And then I think finally, it's just, are we talking written oral? Are we talking about conducting meetings? What would be the full scope, I guess, maybe. And I didn't know that there was anything out, so I certainly can do my due diligence to look and see if that scope of what we're looking for was identified with the request that has been put out for bid. So those would just be my thoughts, and not necessarily questions that need to be answered right now. But areas of concern to make sure that this is successful. Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing from everybody. And that it's absolutely needed, so that we can communicate. As they said, sometimes the language of the government process is difficult, no matter what language you're explaining it in. But at least now we'll try to be able to explain it effectively for those who need it. So thank you for spearheading this. I don't know if you have any quick answers. If not, no worries, and you can communicate that to me later via email or something else.
It basically, the real quick answer, of course, because I need to do a little bit more research, but the whole idea behind the plan is to be able to have this third-party expert to be able to help guide us, like what should be translated, what is required, what is practical, right? Not everything's always practical. And what is really our goal? What message are we trying to convey? So those are very good questions that we hope that whoever we bring on board is going to be able to answer those questions. And of course, the cost of the study is one thing, right? That's going to be kind of definitive, but how do you implement a plan? How much would that cost? That's a very good question. And we have to take that into consideration. So when the language access plan, I guess, outline is developed, it will talk about, I imagine part of that plan will be, here's what you can do, here's what you should do, here's maybe what you shouldn't do, and here's what we think it would cost. So this will become a blueprint to move
Right.
further. So we're actually really starting from the beginning, because we really were working with almost nothing, right? So we're going to create a blueprint. So when that blueprint's created, then we bring it back to council and say, hey, look, here are the options. Here's what the experts are saying. Here's how much it may cost. How should we proceed? And the last question, I know that some of the language is coming from Philadelphia, and I helped put this together. So there are other cities, but I use Philadelphia only because it's in the same state. There's a lot of other cities like New York and San Francisco, very large cities. And Philadelphia is the sixth largest city in the country, but I used some of their experiences, and we kind of put that together. And that's why it's a very broad policy at this point, because we
Right.
really need that expert to come in and really help define it. Because I don't know, the administration are not experts in this, but we know we need to do something. So hopefully more of your questions will get answered as we go further in this process and have more of a blueprint to share.
Good, thank you. So Johanny, if it's pressing, if not, we're gonna keep moving. Do you have a final thought on this?
Just to also explore what our local organizations do, because we may have a lot of the resources locally within our community. So I know a lot of times we go out and beyond to get the services that we need, but let's really explore what we have, because we have some resources locally that can help us get things started.
Thank you. Okay, excellent topic. So our next topic is a little bit more bulky. Really, there were a lot of ordinances, new ordinances introduced at the regular meeting. And the request was made to kind of review and unpack some of them as needed because there was such a high volume. So what we're doing next is really just going through these ordinances almost like a precursor to an agenda review to make sure that we have adequate time between now and next Monday where, we'll have to talk more about this and take action. Marcia, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and I just think it's important as we move through this process to be realistic about what can be voted on next week and what are the priorities for the administration as far as what things do they need to have, because it's not realistic to expect these many ordinances to be introduced and to be thoughtful as far as our decision making. We would probably be here at least another 4 hours to be able to really go through them in detail. So I just want to ask that. I don't know whether, Frank, you could take the lead for the administration to be able to say what are the priorities for next week?
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. Donna?
I'll just add a caveat here. I mean, it's very clear, and our president isn't here, the mayor is here, the managing director is here. So we are meeting without top leadership, which is fine. We have a quorum here, but let's be realistic. I mean, Frank, God love you, you're one person, and you've been designated to represent the administration. But if someone's not here and they have a different point of reference, same with our council president.
Well, I have
I'm just concerned because the top 3 people of 2 branches of government are not in attendance here.
Well,
I
Donna,
have
thank you for bringing
the
that.
authorization to speak on behalf of the mayor in my position, and this, I'm prepared tonight to speak on something that's been vetted out between the mayor and the managing director. Unfortunately, to two unfortunate circumstances for both of them, for various reasons, they're not here. But I do have I believe the topics that we have discussed here, I'm prepared to share the mayor's direction on how to proceed. I believe most of these are really considered housekeeping. There is a few items that we may want to go over and we want to may consider, but most of these we believe are housekeeping, fiscal cleanups, if you want to call it, or end of the year things. But I'll be prepared to be able to answer tonight's questions.
And I appreciate that, Frank. I appreciate everything you do. I just think this is something that all of us should look at going forward. It's extraordinary to be in this situation for whatever reasons there are. And I hope everyone is well and happy and family happy and all that sort of thing. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think this is a way to run a government. It's just my feeling. And
Well-
Frank, thank you again for everything you're doing on the scene. I respect your position as council vice president.
Thank
And
you.
there's an irony to it that you'll be leading a discussion when yourself and Councilman Marmaru may not be in office to have votes on the kind of conversation you are actively engaged in, thoroughly engaged in. And I do wish, and I will say this, I wish that, and I'm sure they watch them, they catch up with our meetings, but it would be nice to have the two council people elect to be with us as attendees on these meetings. I'm just saying it. We're in a time of transition and we are without the top leadership.
So Donna, I think that your point, you've spoken, and what we need to focus on is the opportunity to respect the time of the individuals who are here this evening, and to be able to do our due diligence on the work that we have ahead of us. Whether we'll all be sitting at that table when these go through for final, action, is not really the consideration this evening for starting the discussions and giving ourselves time to adequately vet them, to talk about them, to ask questions about them. And certainly we're all in a professional capacity here, so that if we don't have the answers this evening, or those people who are not on the call with us this evening, there's adequate time and ability to find those answers, ask those questions, and communicate further. So I hope that we'll be able to move through this, although my agenda keeps popping off of my iPhone, so that I don't have it pulled up. And so what I'm going to ask is then, Donna, do you have the agenda pulled up? I have
He's
you
on
on
mute.
mute.
Yes, I have it here.
Okay, can you go ahead and just read the first one while I work on trying to get my agenda back up?
Okay, the first one is amending the 2021 capital improvement fund budget by providing $30,000 in funding needed to cover the cost of the patrol equipment / armory project.
Okay.
Our chief is here. Chief Trinelli is prepared to talk about that. Chief?
Yeah, so the transfer funds is from a project that the previous chief had put into the capital improvement budget, which was for a drone program. That's something that we're not anywhere near in the position to initiate. There is a lot of training. There is a lot of the city where there's restrictions due to the proximity to the airport. So we thought those funds would be better used to complete the project that we're doing in the patrol offices, which is to part of this project that we're referring to right now is to the remodeling and moving of our armory, which is where all of our secure equipment in the patrol division is located. So there are some additional equipment that we need in order to complete that project. We just put in a bench so that they can work on some of the weapon systems, body cameras, things like that. So we're looking to make purchases of some tools and equipment for that, some storage containers, storage bags for things like riot gear, and those types of things to finish off that project. And since we're not going to be using the funds for the drone project, just asking to reallocate them to this project.
Okay, Chief. Council, any questions on that? Or do we need to earmark that for further discussion? Johanny?
So, okay. So did we already spend the money and we are reallocating it to cover the expense because the year's almost over? Or are we anticipating spending it before January 1st?
Yes, we're anticipating spending it before January 1st. We don't have an overage. We're prepared to make all these purchases. We just need to obviously ensure the funds are in place before we do that.
Okay, Marcia?
And then that being said, this would be something we would need to vote on then next week. So the funds could be expended by December 31st. Am I
That's
correct?
correct, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Donna. I pulled up my agenda. So the next one is, let's see here. Amending chapter 23, section 101 of the city code by changing the number of members of the planning commission from 5 to 7 members. Frank, I'm thinking you're going to want to talk about that.
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, as the Councilwoman Lucine has shared, that the administration would like to increase the membership of the Planning Commission from 5 to 7. As we know, the Planning Commission, like many other commissions too, but specifically the Planning Commission, certainly has a direct impact on the quality of life in neighborhoods. Because when we go to planning, you know, these are neighborhood-based things because there's very neighborhood-based focus on how things should look, the aesthetics, legal requirements. So we want to increase the voices of the community on the planning board. We have a very good planning board. We have expertise, but like many commissions, there's a lot to this. So we think this is an opportunity to bring some more people on board to kind of mentor them, but also they're prepared to take on this task at the same time. And so we want to increase the voices. Now, I did have a conversation with Linda earlier today talking about the process, right? How would this look like? And after speaking, right now, we only have 4 members. So if we increase this next Monday, we would probably run into a quorum issue. And she brought that to our attention. She's right. So what the administration is going to alter the request today is we're still committed. We believe this is what we want to do. We think that the Planning Commission and the community will benefit by increasing the membership. However, we're going to kind of do a little reverse. So what we're going to do is the mayor has some, and the administration has some people in mind. We'll have them fill out the applications. Let's have them go through the process to make sure that when we make this change, we have people ready to go. Because looking at this now, if this gets adopted next week and we don't have these other individuals in place for 2 or 3 months of the normal time in the process, we could run into a quorum issue. So we're committed. We want to move forward. But what we're asking tonight is that we have this withdrawn for for the next meeting, and we're going to reintroduce it when we know we have the proper applicant screen and ready to go. So we don't run into a quorum issue, because Linda brought that up to the administration, and that point's very well taken. We want to improve the situation, not hamper it by, oh, wait a minute, we have people coming on board, but for the next 2 months we don't have a quorum. That could be problematic. So we're going to reverse this a little bit. We're going to continue with this, but we're going to ask that this be withdrawn on Monday in the following meeting, with the intent to bring it back and having candidates ready to go for your consideration. So it's about a timing issue. The commitment's still there.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Johanny first, then Donna.
So the last planning commission meeting is tomorrow, the last one of the year. I don't think it's a great idea to postpone it. I think if anything, we should put it on. We should vote on it so that we can be more aggressive in recruiting. So the next meeting, I would anticipate it to be around the same time in January 21st. So it gives us about a whole month to maybe try to recruit 2 people to serve, or, you know, advertise it so that people can apply, so that we can diversify, expand, etc.
So if I could just ask a quick, I mean, Johnny, you're on the boards, authorities, and commissions. I'm sorry, you're on the nominations committee, right? So there's a process of onboarding an individual from start to finish. And I don't know if you know that timeline, Frank, or even Shelley. I think Shelley's probably the expert.
I think Linda could speak to that, if that's okay.
The process generally takes 2 to 3 months.
That's correct.
And without quorum, they can't operate.
Well, currently we have 5 members, right? 5 positions, but we have 4. So we don't want to get into a position that we increase it right now, that we have bare quorum, because it puts a lot of pressure on everybody. It's just not realistic. There's always somebody that may not be able to make a meeting. So once again, we are very committed to increasing the membership. We're just switching the timeline a little bit after speaking with Linda and knowing that the onboarding process would take 2 to 3 months. It would be probably more comfortable to be having that process finish up and then increase the membership, so things are a little bit more smoother than having the risk of having this gap for possibly 2 months, because there's a lot of business from the planning commissions take place, and we don't want to create an issue of a quorum issue when one doesn't exist at the moment. We don't want to create one. But your point's taken very well too, also, Councilwoman Cepeda Freitas, because it is important. We need to be aggressive, and we are aggressive. We have candidates. We just got to get them. We're going to introduce them shortly so you can get through the process, but it's still going to take 2 to 3 months no matter what we do. But it's a very important that we do increase, we call the community voice on that board. And so the commitment's there. This is more of a semantics of a timeline issue of making sure as we do this, we don't, in the interim, create a little issue that we don't need to deal with. That's helpful.
Donna, you were next, right?
Yeah. Couple things here. Do we only have 4 active now on planning? Is that what I'm hearing?
Out of 5, there's 4. One individual has not applied for reappointment. In fact, I think the person's not here. I think they actually resigned because I don't think they're a resident at the moment. So we have 4 active members out of 5. I believe council just approved a nominee recently.
Mhm.
So we have a new person on board, but correct. We have 4 out of 5.
So, okay, we have 4 out of 5. If that person is resigned, obviously then that's an open position. If they have not resigned, and having been on planning commission before I was on council, that term can be extended until new people are put on, which would give you 5. But again, if they resigned, that's an
I
issue.
think they moved out of the area. If I'm correct, from NEMA, they actually moved out of the area. They're just,
Okay.
I don't even know if they
so-
even sent official resignation. They just said, I'm no longer in the area. Their
Okay,
job
okay.
took them somewhere else.
Okay.
I believe
so
that's what
then
happened. Yeah, Linda's confirming it.
that's
Yeah, I believe that's what
Okay.
happened.
Point
Well taken. You're right, because if a term expires, that doesn't necessarily mean that person, that they stay on board if they're available and eligible until we have a replacement. In this case, it's a straight vacancy.
So Frank, you're saying
Yes.
that the administration has some
Yes.
people they want to bring
Yes.
forward. I'm sure on council, many of us could find a couple people that we feel are appropriate for this position. And I respect Linda's point of reference because she certainly has the institutional knowledge more than any of us, but I'm at a loss to see why we can't fast track this, to make it happen as soon as possible. Maybe we can't do January. To me, in my mind, we could do it, but certainly minimally February. But I don't want to see it extend beyond February. I mean, look at this agenda for tomorrow night. This is a full agenda. We're talking land use. We're talking an economy that's doing relatively well. We're talking this is the time that we need to move forward. I mean, our bigger pressing issue is status of the personnel in the planning office, which we're basically down and out when it comes to that. That's really critical. That's where the administration really has got to get those positions filled. I mean, we can't go forward like this unless they're serving a consultant basis. But let's do what we can to fast forward this. I agree that 7 people makes sense. Having served on that board, it's a board you take very seriously. It's not for people that don't want to take that seriously, because it is part and parcel with economic development. So I hope we can at least get this done and people, on that and have 7 people by February's meeting, which gives us 2 months almost from tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Donna. Marcia?
Yeah, and I somewhat agree as far as fast tracking. Things take long if we allow them to, but if we have proper candidates and they've been vetted, we can set up the interview process. We can expedite that interview process. Now, as far as voting it on Monday, I think we have to be careful that we don't set them up for a time in January where they might not have a quorum, but certainly we can vote on it so that by their February meeting, there would be a quorum. So we can plan it out that way.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia.
I had a question on process. Now, Linda, and I, we had a conversation prior to this meeting about this subject matter, but we talked about withdrawing it. Is that the best way to go, or do we table it? I know the problem with tabling though is it kind of clogs up the agenda. Maybe that's not a good idea. If you table something for too long, like a month or two, that may not be practical either, because it just kind of clogs stuff up unnecessarily. So I guess the way to go is we're withdrawing it, but I don't want to indicate that we're still committed. So, but tabling it probably wouldn't be the best really anyway. But we're prepared to reintroduce it as quickly as possible. It's just a timing issue. If that's the pleasure of the council, but that's what the administration is suggesting upon more information and further review.
And Frank, you know, I think that what you're hearing here is that we agree, and, you know, it's critical. The planning commission is critical right now, you know, so the last thing we want to do is enable them ineffective at the
Right.
time where we need them most to operate, especially as Donna mentioned with capacity issues. We need a strong commission then to keep the agenda moving forward. And, you know, whether or not we withdraw or table, you know, we have to be mindful that the administration is presenting their intent. You know, we have tabled things 3 times before. So I think we can decide what's the best council action to take, but I think we understand the intent of your request. And it seems that there's general favor in making this a more robust commission, since it's really critical right now, the work that's being done.
Just a thought that came to me from our legal staff. Would it be helpful to maybe put an amendment to this ordinance where they make the effective date maybe later? Pass this on Monday and say, okay, effective. I'm just making this up. That may be a compromise. And that, by the way, that's not my idea. I have to defer to our solicitor who helps guide us in these processes. Maybe that's even a clearer way. Instead of withdrawing and introducing it, we can say, okay, effective. I'm just on March 1st, that this will take in
Or
place. So
effective
if-
Makes
February
sense.
meeting.
or February 1st, well, what's it, 2 months? Well, we're at the end of the month. So even if we fast
We could
track
do
it,
that. That'd work.
okay,
That'd work.
So
okay. Is that something to consider? Just,
Fred, can we do that? Can we just amend
Yeah,
for
I
a
think
date?
that's an appropriate amendment. I think it's a relatively non-significant amendment. I'll double check since we have a week. I'll look
Okay.
into it since it was kind of just something I thought of in the moment. But
I
I
think
do
it's,
think
I think the charter says not less than 10 days for effective and not more than 30. It's
okay.
something like that.
Yeah, I'll double check that.
okay.
Okay. And while you're checking, there's a couple of critical components here, right? So we have to make sure that they can operate. We have to make sure that there is, even if we're fast tracking, proper time for everyone who needs to onboard and go through the process. So if I'm hearing the administration say, things are really tight right now, we don't have the capacity, please give us the time that we need to do this the right way. I want to make sure that's what we're doing. So let's let the solicitor kind of give us that firm 10 to 30 days, whatever it might be, and then consider that the best action of amendment for the meeting on Monday. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to bill number 97-2021. This is amending the City Code Chapter 396 Parks and Rec, Part 3, Park Use, Section 305 Rules of Conduct, to prohibit the dumping of yard waste in city parks, playgrounds, preserves, and public spaces.
If possible, Councilwoman, if we can group Bill 97, 98 for discussion purposes, because they're both related. And I was going to ask if if Stan could elaborate on, they're companion bills, 97, 98. They're related to each other and they're through recommendation of the EAC. So if
Okay.
we're okay, if we could discuss both, if that's okay. And I'd like to turn it over to Stan, if he would be able to take a lead on this particular piece of legislation.
Yes, thank you, Frank. We have found this to be a particular problem in some of our parks, as everybody has noticed, where we'll find branches being delivered, just dropped off on a Saturday or Sunday, and then Monday we have to clean up. It's been a challenge, and people just have to understand that yard waste is in their trash. and which is different than every other local municipality that they do not pick up yard waste, where we do. We actually have an opportunity with residents that call the CSC, say that they have some yard waste and we'll come and pick it up. So that's as easy as it. We're trying to keep the city following mayor's one of his 4 pillars to keep it clean. And I guess the next thing is we have to talk about is ensure that the people who are participating also in rec board stuff take their trash in with them and bring it in and take it out. You know, that's the next thing that's going to be brought up later in 2022. It's just, this is a good first step, and this is just what needs to happen.
I believe Shelley Smith shared, well, I don't believe she shared in the chat that there's actually a third piece of legislation that we're not ready to present, but still legal review. So this is a package of ordinances that Public Works has been working with the Environmental Advisory Council about. But there's a ordinance that we'll present shortly to council in regards to invasive plants and noxious weeds. I don't know much about it, but it's taking legal review. So there's a companion set of bills, but we're prepared, if I'm correct, tell me if I'm wrong, Stan, to present these 2 because they're ready to go. We know there's going to be a third bill. Okay.
That is correct. We find it extremely challenging with the invasive plants. People are just going to their local Lowe's or wherever and buying plants that are not native to Pennsylvania, and they're overtaking and not necessarily destroying or overtaking the existing fauna, but also we're having issues with birds aren't nesting correctly as well. So these are some of the things that the city is facing, and I commend Steve Harity and Bethany, our new sustainability manager, for putting all this through. Those 2 have done a heck of a job.
Okay, thanks, Stan. I see Johanny has a question.
So how do we enforce this?
That's the challenge that we all have. I truly think that part of it has to be the rationalization. If it happens, it's documented like trash. We have many instances where we've even found people's receipts and statements, and they'll go to a magisterial justice and they'll get thrown out. So things like this, that council is going to have to ensure that magisterial justices, these MDJs, do their job, and they're there to make sure the city is clean, not necessarily to ensure they get reelected to the next bunch. And we have these challenges all the time. But thank you, Johanny. That's a great question.
Do we have cameras at parks? Maybe we need
Well,
to
we
consider
do in some
installing
places.
cameras.
We do have cameras, and then they get shut out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And we've had cameras installed at Dana site, and they've gotten shut out, or it is what it is. Things and we don't. There was a time when people were buying the local $200 cameras, but what happens is it's after the fact. We don't have the real time like the police department has real time, and then can actually have the clarity. And those cameras are $1,500 to $2,500 a piece. So I agree with you, Johanny.
And I'm sorry, Marcia, I had a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, but this, being both on the Rec Commission, the Environmental Advisory Board, and also having parks right across the street from my house, I think this is an important issue. We need to move forward. We did have a lot of dumping at the top of South 15th Street, and it was something owned by Burke's Nature. They collaborated with a neighborhood member, put up signage, and he helped with, surveying their or surveillance of the area. And the dumping has pretty much stopped because there were eyes from the neighborhood on what's going on. So maybe we need to look at some innovative approaches to this as far as the enforcement that Johanny asked about. I know that there's good citizens out there that would like to work together with government because they don't want to see the parks being dumped on either.
No, Marcia, you're absolutely correct. The Clean City Coordinator in that new role is following the mayor's, again, one of his 4 tenets of a clean city is to ensure that there is education. People do what they're supposed to do. But then it comes out if people are caught, they have to pay the consequences. And sometimes that's been swept under the rug for many, many years. And I think council needs to put some teeth into it and say, okay, you do it. Well, now we have issues.
And over a period of time, people, I think sometimes honestly were putting yard waste thinking it was okay thing to do, like, oh, that's not trash, it's being recycled. So this ordinance is important because now this allows to post signs, right? It'll say, you can't do this because of ordinance. Because right now we tell them we can't do it, but that's somebody we wrote an interaction. I mean, some people are doing it, they really believe, hey, I'm just recycling, I'm putting leaves, that's harmless and stuff, but that doesn't work well. So now we'll be able to post signs. If this ordinance is adopted, we'll be able to put signs, which becomes an education. No, you don't dump yard waste. And that's why Bill 98 is also important. We already provide yard waste collection for free, but now we're going to put it into the ordinance, because when we come into an enforcement situation that somebody does dump this yard waste and get fined, the magisterial judge may ask, well, what's the remedy? What can they do with it? Well, Bill number 98 says we provide it for free service. So that's how we lock in the enforcement, so we don't have loopholes. So we're kind of already have this in place, but we're putting in an ordinance so we can really be more effective in enforcement, and plus educating. It'd be great to have these signs up where Marcia suggested. We get a lot up Neversink. People just dump all kinds of stuff this time of year, leaves, right? Thinking it's okay. Well, no, it's not, because where they're dumping it, it's mixed with trash, all the reasons why it's not okay. But now we can post signs if this is adopted. And I think a lot of people, more people than not, hopefully will say, hey, I didn't know. I see that sign. I don't want any problems. I won't do it. And if you do it, well, we got a little bit more teeth now. Enforcement.
Thanks, Frank. I see Johanny has a follow-up question.
Yes. So the signs that are going to be posted, do we have litter, because it would be considered littering if they're dumping in the parks, correct? So do we have fines for littering that are posted in big letters that people will be fined X amount if caught? We do?
There are signs. There are signs that even it's going through reviews as well, in terms of making sure they are bilingual, making sure they're enforceable. And that was, and when legal, Fred maybe will speak to it a little bit more, but now the signs are rather large, 2 feet by 3 feet. And so people just have to understand. And I think that's also through social media as well. This is what it is. This is part of having a clean city. But you're right, Johanny. Just like our street sweepers do not pick up leaves. For the tipping fees alone, if we pay $350 now, $350,000 for tipping fees, it could double if we have to pick up leaves with our street sweepers. So.
And one other thing that I like.
Apologize.
Okay. One of the things that I'd like to see this administration to expand on. So we have the South of Penn Initiative that have done tremendous work at Reading Iron Playground. So why can't we expand on that concept? I know that from that group, there's a young woman who always, I see her with a lot of cleanups at Front and Schiller. So we need to utilize what works and keep expanding on those models and figure out how we encourage and empower our communities to be more actively involved in their park cleanups and maintaining them clean. I think that would be very effective. So something to start thinking about and considering for next year and the year after that. I mean, we can have a north of Penn, west of Penn, east of Penn, whatever. But that model works. Lucine can attest to that, and we should be able to duplicate that or replicate it.
Yeah, thanks. I want to speak to that, but go ahead, Marcia, because I don't
I
want to.
just wanted to say, I've been involved in considerable number of cleanups, and I think the Public Works is doing that through the work that Bethany has been doing. I can find that almost every weekend there's a cleanup going on. There's volunteers from the community engaged. I think what we need to do is expand that to be able to include the community members, because once they see the problem, and even though I appreciate volunteers coming from outside, I think it's better for people from the neighborhood to be involved in the cleanups. So I think we have a good model started. It's just a matter of continuing the momentum. And also to be able to get back to the issue about the noxious weeds. One of the things I've seen when people are dumping, they are really destroying the environment. For whatever reason in my neighborhood, people decided to dump bamboo onto the base of Neversink, which God knows what that's going to look like in another year or so. So we just have people having no idea what they're doing. So the education part is really important.
Thank you, Marcia. Yeah, I think that, you know, the yard waste issue is one where the best approach here is to close the loopholes, to reach out in terms of education, you know, making sure the MDJs know that we're updating our policies and that it's there in place to support them in making the decisions that they have to make. And also that, you know, we're talking about yard waste, right? So we're not, there is litter that gets into yard waste bags or plastics or things like that. But specifically, what we're talking about with F and G is yard waste. And so we want to be clear about that and how that is harmful. So again, it falls back into the whole education component for our community. And, you know, perhaps I know other municipalities have designated areas in which people can go and place their yard waste. But I think, you know, you've coupled this really nicely with G. So just reminding them, they don't have to take it anywhere, right? They don't even have to go across the street to the local park, just put it on the curbside or put it in the street, and that we're going to be collecting it for free. So I want to just compliment you on this, and also the EAC for their insight and advice on this. It makes sense. And it's just education, 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 and all the people that are touching this, right? So I think this is going to have good outcomes. And of course, if we complement that with the native approach as well, then we've really got people thinking, you know, on the right level of where we need to be sustainably. So thank you. All right, we're going to keep going because I do want to get through most of these things if we can. And I know it might not be realistic and we might not get through all of them, but at least we've discussed as much as possible. Bill number H is amending the City Code Chapter 212, Part 136 for curbside waste collection, setting the fees for 2022, excuse me. Does everybody need me to run through the fees, or do you have them in front of you with your agendas? There's the code citation, the fee, and then the description as well. I don't know if we need to talk through this, if we have questions about the fee structure, if the administration has anything to speak on this in general. Frank, let me start with you.
Sure. I believe in a previous meeting that our finance director provided a 5-year projection in regards on how these fees were generated. And I believe we did have some conversation. So we're prepared to answer any additional questions. But the fees are pretty much based on our 5-year projection in conjunction with the contract that was approved by council. The cost that the contractor charges the city and the administrative costs in order to implement the program, taking the 5-year projection, putting that together is help what generated the fee that we're proposing for council for their consideration.
Okay, I see Johanny has questions. Go ahead.
So I see that, obviously, and I remember the discussion about the fee for trash going up by $5 a month. However, the recycling fee has been reduced. So what impact, financial impact, will it really have on our residents?
I can explain the recycling portion of that. That was what council approved last week. That's how we resolved the recycling litigation, is by keeping it. It's actually the same. It looks like it's reduced. We built in the Clean City fee into recycling last year. That was something we did a little differently, but the recycling portion was still $69.40 last year. So recycling is staying the same. And next year we'll be limited on how much we can increase it, same as the following year, to be consistent with the settlement in the recycling case.
So, but it says on here from 90 to 69.
Right. Part of that was the Clean City fee, which is different. The recycling portion of that $90 was still set $69.40. In fact, if I could turn back the clock, I would have suggested that we do it completely separate, itemized that instead of combining it, but it is what it is. So yeah, the recycling fee is basically the same. It just appears different because of that Clean City fee.
Okay. I think this is one of the areas in which I'm going to recommend any member of council that has, any uncertainties to reach out to Fred, to Frank, or maybe even Jamar on this, or Stan, reach out to the managing director and say, I have these questions. I still, need them answered, because this is, go ahead, Johanny.
This is to be voted on Monday. So Fred mentioned the Clean City fee, right? So shouldn't there be an item there that says Clean City fee and what that is, so that it doesn't get confusing for a resident? Because we're gonna get the questions, we're gonna get, people are gonna be commenting on this, obviously. So if we're amending, then why not just make it more clear?
I think part of it was that last year we still had a significant, relatively significant amount of people that weren't on the combined fee. But now with the single hauler going completely into effect, we had put into the ordinance that was passed last summer that there would be a, I think, 1 year grace period for people to who had currently had contracts with a private hauler. Now, basically, everybody's on the combined trash and recycling fee, which is going up to reflect the trash portion of it. And in fact, we're going to keep the recycling fee separate, basically just to, for the purposes of that settlement agreement, to show that, we have to increase it for trash, but we're keeping the recycling portion the same.
Okay, Marcia?
And I agree with Johanna. I still think it's confusing when you have the $90 crossed out, because from anyone reading it, including myself, until you explained it, it looks like a reduction. And maybe you need to just go back to the drawing board and see how to figure out how to keep that separate, because if not, it would be hard to explain to the public.
Every year, unfortunately, because we've had a very unique situation with our recycling and trash fees, and we've had to do kind of these, mental gymnastics to try to move with the goalposts that were changing when the laws were changing and the court decisions and all that. So it's difficult. I mean, we're trying our best to address some moving targets here, including the litigation. So I think, I respectfully, I think the way it is now is the cleanest. And if we move it again, it's kind of got like a Rubik's Cube effect, where we change one thing and then we create a new problem. It's like whack-a-mole.
Okay. I have another question though, and it doesn't specify in here. There is a rate for seniors, am I correct? I don't know who can answer.
Yeah, I believe,
that.
yeah.
Yes.
Is it important to have
discount.
that stated in the ordinance
For it to be effective, I think so, yeah.
so that another line would be added? This is a question I have. I would feel more comfortable having it spelled out there. So the information that we provided to the seniors is included in the ordinance.
I thought it wasn't in there.
I think it's there, doesn't it say?
Yeah.
It says municipal waste.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
apologize.
yeah, it's in there, because otherwise we wouldn't be able,
Okay.
we wouldn't have
Okay,
the
good,
authority
good.
to reduce it.
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay. Any other questions right now? And again, I'm going to really encourage everybody, because of this issue, please, please, please send your suggestions or concerns to the managing director so that it filters appropriately. So we can talk about it a little bit more. I think that this needs to be on committee of the whole next week, just to make sure that we all are feeling comfortable with where it is. So I'm going to make that request. So we'll talk about this again, specifically H, during the committee of the whole next week. Johanny?
And just to your point, Lucine, we're having a meeting. There'll be minutes documented. We've already voiced our concerns. These are being documented. Why do we have to follow up and continue with the managing director? Shouldn't he be in tuned and then have a conversation maybe with the solicitor to figure out how do we adjust, continue to amend, or rectify what we've discussed?
I think it's really person to person, how you prefer to do your, interactions professionally on work that needs to be done. So all I can do is make suggestions. And then next Monday, we'll know that this item will come up again on the agenda. And at that time, everybody can approach it, having a week's time to work through it. So certainly I'm not mandating anybody to do anything. And you're right, minutes are documented, meetings are recorded. And the goal, I think, is to get the business of the city done, period. So.
And I'll be glad to take anyone's calls in between the two meetings, especially considering there are legal aspects that, it would be easier, I think, to have a one-to-one conversation. So Johanny, if you want to give me a call tomorrow or anyone else on council, I think I can answer them or get the information you need from someone out in the administration.
Thanks, Fred. So let's move on to I. This one is amending, I'm sorry, no. Authorizing the sale of 623 Wool Alley to John H. Miller and/or Real Food Farm LLC for $500. Any questions here? I know that I sponsored this and have worked with Fred on this for, no offense, Fred, entirely too long, right? It should not be this difficult for the real estate committee to get together, for individuals who are interested in purchasing parcels or properties that belong to the city in this circumstance. So you know how I feel about that. That process needs to be better.
I know one of my suggestions, and it will probably be a suggestion, unfortunately, after you've left office, but to whether it's a larger scale amendment, part of a larger scale amendment to the purchasing policy, I think at a minimum we can do a shorter amendment to the real estate section of the purchasing policy, if to just eliminate this committee, because at the end of the day, it becomes a decision of the managing director anyway. All this committee does is make a recommendation, and the way it's set up now, it's not really helpful. All due respect to those that serve on it when called, but it does become much more of an impediment than the good that it brings. So I think we should strongly consider amending that and because at the end of the day, council is going to be voting on this in public and with an explanation. So whether it's in this case, this was a constituent that came to their council member to make this recommendation, or whether it's someone going to the administration and saying, hey, I'm interested in this property. And I get calls because it says, if you go to like the recorder of deeds or the tax parcel search, it says solicitor. So people ask me if they can buy my property, which I have to tell them I don't own it. But ultimately, it's going to be whether it's a lease or a sale, it needs to be passed by ordinance. So it's not really necessary to have this extra step in the process, particularly where we're talking about, abandoned lots. We're not going to be and I want to make this abundantly clear before people, because I can see questions coming. I'm not talking about like the big real estate we own. This isn't going to be Dana South and Fifth Street properties. This is a property we demoed 8 years ago or 20 years ago that's an abandoned lot now, or something like that. We did this recently. I think this was also in Lucine's district, where we had a lot and we leased it to Barrio Alegrio. And that property in this South of Penn group. So right. I think this is unfortunately, this step just kind of gets in the way, but we're here and we got it before Lucine left office. So
well done. Any questions about this, specifically this? Go ahead, Johnny.
So for this property, we're selling it, not leasing it, correct?
Correct.
And do we know and I don't know if this was covered, the intended use for this property once it's purchased?
Yeah, I don't know if Lucine, if you know better than I do, but there's talk of it becoming a farmer's market. The person who's purchasing it is looking to develop several parcels. Like we own one of like 4 or 5 parcels that they've already purchased the other one. So once they get ours, they'll have a plot that they can use to, I think they want to turn into a farmer's market or something like that. So they will still need all of the approvals and all of that, and that could still change. but that's at least what the proposal is.
Right now, the parcels are being used to grow food. So it's garden. Okay.
I'm sorry, Lucy. I'm so sorry. Currently, you said it's utilized for gardens. So who manages those gardens right now?
No, I'm so sorry. That parcel is vacant and the city
Oh.
is responsible to maintain it. It's weeds, I think, at
Okay.
best.
Okay,
The parcels
not being
next to it,
utilized.
adjacent to it are gardens. Yeah.
gotcha.
Marcia.
Yeah, just a clarification, that used to be in District 2.
Mhm.
And at the point, there was a home there and there was a fire, I believe. And that's why the parcel is a lot that sat empty and then the city acquired it. So I am very pleased that there's individuals who are willing to be able to do some more productive use of it.
Right. Yeah, we actually, the hope here is to give, as Fred was talking, the ability for individuals to be taking on stewardship of land and property, instead of seeing it be neglected and blighted by the city. So let's keep that moving forward. We want to see that all over the place, right? We're moving on to J. Yes. Authorizing the required construction easements to PennDOT for the rebuilding of the Schuylkill Avenue Railroad Bridge, PennDOT project, State Road 183-05B, or is that 8B? Stan, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, this is a project that's been in the works for approximately 4 years. It's a cooperation between PennDOT and Norfolk and Southern. It's to allow Norfolk and Southern to bring in high cubes, if you will. Now, the only part of it that the city has to be concerned about is planting 3 trees. That's the only thing we're doing. Everything else is 100% funded by PennDOT. And this is going to be this is going to be the elimination of a choke point. That bridge is so narrow that you find congestion, and this is going to be perfect.
Donna.
This one went through RATS as well. The coordination of the reconstruction of this bridge was based on, this goes back a few years, like Stan was saying, the Schuylkill Avenue Bridge was rehabbed, Buttonwood Street Bridge was rehabbed. This is sort of the final link in that triage of bridges. And this again is, as he said, for the double stacked rail cars that you see you see all around. This particular, the height of this little bridge couldn't accommodate that. So what is going to occur when this bridge is reconstructed is there will be traffic redirected because you won't be able to scoot in Schuylkill Avenue anymore. It will be closed for the length of time it takes to build that bridge. So that is literally at the start, Jahani, of your district, or my district ends there at, well, actually, it's where our districts converge, because you're on the other side of the railroad tracks, and I'm on the north end of the railroad tracks. So we think we really need to make sure that the community in that area is well aware of it. Pedestrian traffic will also be impacted by that, although there is that pedestrian bridge further down a little bit. But people need to be aware of if they walk to the grocery store, if they walk downtown, there will be times that they won't be able to take Schuylkill Avenue and they will be diverted. And it's going to be, for those who depend on walking, that will be a bit of a walk, a little extra walk. Dan, do you know the time frame? I mean, I'm thinking that 6 months.
Yes, it should start relatively sooner, as soon as the clearing of right of way and then notice to proceed contracts and the like. One thing is PennDOT is very cognizant of and I hate to call it a food desert, but the IGA, sorry, it's not a IGA. I remember it was an IGA at the corner of Buttonwood and
that's
yeah.
there. But then
but
the
now
other
they have
grocery
to
store
walk
that
over.
was going to be built is still not functioning. It's still not
that's
open.
that's not going to be part and parcel of this. So PennDOT understands what needs to be done. I think that's going to be in their calculus. So as long as they understand, and we as a city tell them that they need to pay special attention to the residents who are walking, who can't drive,
Right.
and nor can afford Grubhub.
Well, does anyone have any idea of when the grocery store at Schuylkill Avenue near the corner of Douglas Street will be open? Jahani, do you know the owner of that by any chance? We had voted on the reestablishment of the zoning of those parcels. It's around
I-
600.
Is it Dr. Pepin that owns that?
I
property?
believe
Like,
so. I
yeah.
mean, I know that the work is going on, but ideally it would be nice to see that open before this bridge construction begins. I don't know if you have a relationship with him, if you could ask him.
I'll
Yes,
call
ma'am.
him. I'll call him.
Okay. But I see what Stan's saying. But anyhow, overall, the bridge will be widened. I believe there was some accessing of properties to widen that bridge, as I recall. So you will see a change there.
Thank you. Johanny, final comment?
Yes, what is the timeline? Do we know the timeline for that?
I do not have the timeline in place. This is just to allow Fred to talk to PennDOT in terms of, and these are small takings that they're going to be using.
I can get the timeline from
They're
Alan.
not, it hasn't been established truly done in terms of where we are. I would like to say bids go out at the end of, say Q3 2022, but I saw Alan and I were talking about it. That would probably be, so you're looking relatively soon in PennDOT world. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I'll check on our routes
Thanks, Donna.
too,
Okay.
because we improve all those projects. But you may be right. I thought it was a little sooner because it was predicated on Buttonwood Street and Schuylkill Avenue bridges.
Yeah, that's the other with the pedestrian.
But again, with
bridge.
supply chain and everything and COVID, everything's been pushed.
Right. And Stan will ensure that the trees that the city plants are native, right?
Yes,
Right.
Lester and I already had a conversation about that. They are going to be what the arborist wants.
I
Yes.
love that. Perfect.
No bamboo.
No bamboo. All right,
No
moving on.
ginkgos,
Yeah, right, right. Those are horrible.
I-
no Bradford pears.
We have a
Delicious.
list. We have a list. Right? So,
Yes,
right.
Lester does have a list that he shares.
moving on to K, we're amending the 2021 capital improvement fund budget ordinance. I'm sorry. The fund budget ordinance is hereby amended by providing $500,000 in funding to cover the cost of the Schlegel Park Pool project. That's pretty self-explanatory. I see Marcia has a question.
Well,
And then
actually, it's
the
a comment, and Melissa is on. We both are on the rec commission representing the city. And a question did come up at our meeting last Tuesday regarding the timeline for the project. I did speak with Stan, but I think it's good that there is a concern from the rec commission that the pool will not be open. I know that's probably not the case, but because the concern was brought up at the meeting, I think it's important to address that. And will this funding be able to make the project move forward?
Yes, this funding, and Fred can attest to the conversations that we've had previously, even in executive session, some of the difficulties we faced. The contractor has assured us he'll be back early part of the spring to finish all the punch lists and sidewalk issues and things of that nature. So I feel very confident that the main pool will be open. Fred,
Is there
do you
any way
agree
that
with
we can put that? I know you can't commit in writing because there are contingencies, but I think it would be important because the rec commission budget is based on staff to be able to man the pool. And if people do not think the pool is going to be open, they're going to find other jobs. So there needs to be some certainty as far as that pool being opened at the end of May.
I personally would like to say that yes, but it's a pool that was built in a floodplain.
Yeah.
don't know. I would love to say, yes, Marcia, it should happen. I cannot give you my assurances that at a 5.9s level, but I'm pretty darn sure that it will be done. We had a commitment early on from the contractor. He would get it done.
Okay.
Friend of
Melissa,
mine
you,
speaking out of turn.
I just
I'm
wanted to see whether Melissa had anything to add here.
No, I was
Melissa?
just, when we talked about it in the rec meeting, I was just concerned, why weren't we updated on, because I thought it was gonna be done this past the end of the summer, but I didn't know where we was at with it. So I didn't know what answer to give them when they asked about it.
So I guess that as the administration moves forward with the potential completion of the main pool project by the time swimming season is ready, we need regular updates so that our representatives going to the rec commission can be able to provide that. Is that possible, Stan?
It should happen. It should have happened prior to.
Okay.
I'm not part of the rec board. I don't, we have representatives that are on that. And so that I can assure you, Frank, and I can see that you're going to attest to that also, that the communication is where it should be.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Johanny. I have a few questions too.
Not a question, just a follow-up to your statement, Lucine. So we should anticipate follow-ups and reports on a consistent basis from Frank? Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Or Frank is
Frank's not-
from Stan?
No, not after the 28th. But no, the project manager on our site, we have CEG Engineering, who has been doing a wonderful job. Frank can attest, they're trying their best, and Cindy and her designee have been running the project internally. I have full faith and confidence in Cindy and her abilities on this. I just, it was just, as Fred can attest, as we spoke about earlier in an executive session, sometimes things happen, and I would like to leave it at that, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that the managing director needs to include this in the administrative report at least 2 or 3 times prior to the opening of Memorial Day, right? So we need to have some updates on this project in the administrative report. And I think that's the appropriate place for it to be delivered. I have questions. You know, this doesn't sound like the children's pools or splash park combo, whatever design was happening there, has been finalized or is part of this scope. I'm really concerned that $500,000 in addition to get the pool open is not addressing the major issue at hand, which is that it's in a flood zone or a floodplain, and the structure and location, will continue to need improvements. I don't know that that's being addressed. So those are my areas of concern. So I think that, those stated, in addition to regular updates for us and for the public at large, will be critical on this item. But I don't have any concerns about the $500,000 transfer. That's stated here. And unless anybody else does, I'm going to keep going. Okay.
I'm so
Last
sorry, Lucine, I'm so sorry. Do we escrow this money? Because obviously it's 2021 money and we're going into 2022. So do we put this money aside just for this particular project and it won't affect 2022's budget?
Actually, this monies are coming from 2021 to in other areas, because the original guesstimate that was made by the CIP people who created the line item, it was in about 456,000, and the price tag came in for 1.4 million. They severely underthought what the project really was. And so that's where this is the numbers, because it is quite an extensive project, other than in almost you took hydraulic excavators and dug out the old pool and put a new one back in, knowing there were still underlying concerns.
Yeah. Okay. In addition, we're looking at L, which is $200,000 to the LED lighting project. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read this on myself. Here, let me hold it this way. It might be easier to see. The lighting project fund. I know we have been getting updates on all of those that have been transitioned. So this is just to keep that going, right?
That is correct. This is to ensure that we are paying our bills timely. Yes. Yes. that
Okay.
is-
Any questions on that before I move to M? All right. So then we're looking at authorizing the transfer of $40,000 from Public Works administrative contracted services to maintain repair street lights for the purpose of year-end street lighting repairs. So we've got the LED lighting project fund, and then we've got an additional 40,000 in this bill for the repairs. Any questions there? Go ahead, Stan.
This is because we've noticed that there's been so many dark lights, street lights, not only Med Ed, but ours. And they've been dark for so long, people just took accustomed to it. And the mayor asked, why are these lights dark? And we went out for 2 successive weekends at night and saw where they are and started fixing them all. That's what this is covering.
That's good to hear. I know that we've had some significant issues with lighting for other reasons in the 18th Ward, and that hopefully they're going to be addressed also along the highway. I know that's something that's come up with Donna's work with rats because it's very dangerous. So I'm hoping that that is also on the docket for lighting for 22. Donna.
Just to update you, and I want to put a shout out to Commissioner Rivera
Mhm.
regarding the lights along the highway.
Yep.
I can provide you guys with a report on that. They are being addressed because they're actually county. It's very weird how everything is divided up. But the work is being done right now in different sections of the bypass lights. You guys have seen they've been dark forever and ever. Basically, the root cause has been wear and tear of conduits underneath, other construction activities that have broken the conduits, the natural wear and tear of things along the way. Each section has a different reason that it's been off. And RATS has been pushing it, and I thank Commissioner Rivera. He's joined RATS, and I think he's been pushing it stronger than perhaps people have in the past. So I will be happy to provide that to you. And again, my thanks to Commissioner Rivera for being so proactive on this again, because this is a county issue. So we're talking lights along the bypass, both West Shore and Warren Street. So I'll provide that to you guys, and I will ask Commissioner if he could make that pretty public, because I think that's important for people.
Yeah, thanks, Donna.
Segues from this particular topic, but it also is, it's news people should know.
Absolutely. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we're going to move on to N, which is authorizing the transfer of $50,000 from Public Works. Let me see, Public Works admin contracted services to contracted services, providing unforeseen maintenance and repair to public facilities. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
For example, Cindy just ran into this. We had to replace a boiler at Bear Park that was unforeseen. It was an older boiler, but it wasn't on the docket for another few years because there's other things, and it meant an untimely occurrence.
Right. My question is that if this should be specified, so repair to, it just says public facilities, should it say the specific facilities that where this is going?
The repair to that boiler was, I believe it's $8,716. And this is to cover some of the other things that are ongoing as well. We had a roof issue at Third and Court, so there's a myriad of other things she's been addressing tremendously. I don't know if that's going to be able to be parsed out. We could probably ask Kyle, who's doing a wonderful job as well, to work with Cindy to get an itemized spreadsheet if you would like. We don't typically do that. We just put it there and then draw down because, as you mentioned before, Lucine, they just don't have the necessarily staff to keep on like that tally. There should be one day. If you want that to happen, please feel free.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see that just because this reads very vague in general, you know, from the Public Works Administrative Contracted Services to contracted services. So even there, it's a little vague. So the more specific we can be, the better. Marcia?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Lucine. However, managing grants, I want to just give you a warning about that, is that if we make it too specific and then they need to change the project because things are unpredictable, then the administration has to come back to us for approval. So we have to balance that off as far as how we want to manage any of the movement of funds. Because if you then need to come back to us, then we're going to have another, needing it to be introduced, another week. And so a project that may need to happen quickly won't be able to.
I understand. I'm sorry. Is this a grant?
It doesn't have to be a grant. Anytime you're asking for approval for movement of money, if you're that specific, then you might. And again, it's an administrative kind of function. It doesn't have anything. I'm just saying my experience with grant management, that's one of the things I've learned is that you sometimes need to be broader to be able to allow flexibility to manage monies.
Very good. Thank you, Marcia. Point well taken. Johanny?
I agree with Lucine. I think it helps in being clear and transparent with money and how monies are being moved around. I also think that, Stan alluded to, we're having an issue with staff. So is that the reason for the unforeseen maintenance? Since we are limited in capacity, are we having some oversight on our properties and our facilities? Like I'm concerned about that because we know that we have problems with existing properties that we own in terms of not maintaining them properly. So I get concerned with this.
Okay. That was a comment, right?
Yes, it was a comment, but I support your statement. I agree with you that it should be very clear.
Okay. Thank you. Marcia?
And I would just want to ask for counsel as we go through the process over the next several weeks, that we need to revisit the questions that are coming up regarding anything that needs to be done with Public Works and the immensity of the responsibilities of maintaining all these projects, moving ahead with new capital projects, and how that is to be carried out. It's an enormous amount of work, and I think that the staff that we have that's assigned to this sometimes isn't adequate enough to be able to do the scope of the work that's needed. And I don't think that discussion can occur without the managing director and mayor being present.
Right. I'm then respectfully going to continue to move on here. Let's see here. We are on N, authorizing the, no, sorry, O, amending the city code chapter 23, part 1201, downtown revitalization, public-private partnership. We might just have to wait for the administrative team and Jeff, because I'm sure they need to speak to this.
Right.
But are there any just very general comments right now that the administration needs to say?
I do just want to make just a quick brief policy statement. What the administration is proposing is making some very minor changes to the downtown revitalization public-private partnership. And the two changes are that being recommended to be made. We want these changes to be reflective of where we are today. When this was put together, roughly, I think around 2017, we still had DID on board and some other partners. And moving forward, the two changes that are being proposed in the ordinance, and if we just have a moment, can I share my screen briefly? Would that be all right? Just to show you, let's make sure I do this right. I think I got this.
Go ahead.
Let's see here. Okay. Two things is the language that's being changed is two things, that this process is going to be city driven. This is reflective of the mayor's philosophy, the mayor's policy on how we handle downtown. Up to this point, this public-private partnership was driven by the chamber, the Greater Reading Chamber, which they're still included as being a critical and integral partner. But the difference here is that we will be driving the city of Reading this process now that we have a downtown coordinator in place, which didn't exist before. So that's the big change. Now, the second change is the suggested membership change of the executive team. So the reason I'm sharing my screen is you can see what was crossed out and what was suggested. What's the recommendation of the membership here is much more reflective of what downtown looks like today. For example, you see the bomb representative of Collegetown. We have a downtown coordinator, which is Sydney Kastner. We have a representative from the Latino Chamber, the Berks Alliance, the Greater Reading Chamber, the County of Berks, the Community Development Director, a representative from the Mayor's Office, and City Council. To see the things that have been crossed out were actually similar but very vague, like a representative of a small business, 2 representatives from a private entity. They're very vague. So we've got a little bit more specific because as we evolve for downtown and as we work on the economic revitalization, we've identified specific partners that have been with us and we're bringing them to the table on the executive board. So those are the 2 changes you see. They're not radically different. We're not radically transforming the public-private partnership. Is what we're doing is we're bringing it up to date to show that it's a city-driven process and that we've increased or about more specific about who should be on the executive board. But it's not to be excluding anybody. As we know, for those who participated, when we have the general meetings, everybody and all stakeholders and any residents open to anybody. So that's what the 2 proposal changes that you see. And I do know that, there's probably some further comment. I know the council president had, his thoughts, but I just want to share for the group the position and the policy statement that the administration is taking on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I am going to request that this specifically be placed on the committee of the whole agenda for next week. Because again, I feel that the mayor, the managing director, and council president need to speak on this with all of us. But I'm happy to take just a couple comments from each person and keep our agenda moving tonight. So Donna, let's start with you, then Johanny.
Yeah, having gone back and been a part of the Main Street Board and some other things over the course of the years, not as recently as you have, we've seen with different downtown entities. I would respectfully ask that when you look at this group, that in addition to the council president, there be another member of council. I respectfully ask that. Ideally it should be one of the people whose councilmanic districts touch the downtown, but I respectfully request that we include in that council president and another council member.
And to your point, Donna, the original structure was to have a council, just like all the other boards, authorities, and commissions. It was a council, a liaison, and an alternate. In this case, actually, the way that the P3 was established, it had an alternate and a second alternate. So it was Jeff, myself as alternate, and Johanny. But noted, I think there's some work that needs to be done there in terms of representation and participation. Johanny.
I would like to see the actual merchants be part of this committee
Exactly.
because I don't see them represented. Like our key stakeholders, taxpayers, the bloodline of downtown, if you will. Where are they reflected in this list?
Yeah, noted. Marcia.
And another component of that, I think the businesses are important, but the reality is social services are also very much a part of having their offices in downtown Reading. If you look at the occupancy of some of the buildings, 645 Penn Street, some of the other buildings, if you start walking down the street, you'll realize that healthcare industry, all of them are. So I think when we look at this, we need to be really reflective of the diversity of types of businesses that are downtown. The other question I had, and I saw downtown coordinator, is that going to be a new position in the position ordinance?
that's been approved by approving the position ordinance of downtown coordinator is in
Okay.
the 2022 position ordinance. So by
Okay.
that passage, that position's been created.
Okay, so that position's been created, and then you will be informing us as personnel. I know
But
that.
It's
I'm
Sydney
just-
Kastner. It's Sydney
Okay.
Kastner. That's official. That's been official public announcement. So
Okay.
she's already being transitioned into that role.
Okay, so that when we spoke about Cindy earlier, in relation to facilities, that's not really on her plate anymore.
We're going through a transition from that responsibility to a new person that
Mhm.
will be shared at the beginning of the year.
Okay. All of these are like, oh, as Jeff always says, all the moving parts here that
Mhm.
keep, the different wheels of government moving forward. So I just think it's important to understand who's doing what, so that even though we don't directly communicate with them, that we at least have an idea who has the ownership.
Yeah, I agree, Marcia, and it is confusing. I did also notice that when Stan was, making those references. So I think that, I'm going to encourage the administration to, as frequently as possible, give us the public updates, during, just as, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, during the administrative reports. Typically now Abe has been saying, welcome to this new member, welcome to this new member. Well, I think, that needs to be enhanced, just to say, and, other transitions or changes or, as frequently as possible, so that we do have an understanding of all of the moving parts.
There's nothing worse
Johanny?
than hearing it on the street without hearing it formally.
Right,
And that's
exactly.
what's occurring.
So Johanny, did you have another point
No,
for
I
the
that was
policy?
the topic of like my discussion last week in terms of Cindy being listed twice on the salary, on the position ordinances.
Right, right.
And also not being very clear in terms of job description, roles and responsibilities and so on and so forth. But here we are. So I'm sure we will proceed and make the best of our future.
Right. And, I appreciate Frank walking through the policy changes that the administration is considering. I think that it's critical that they're considering some changes at this time. And, it is their responsibility now because of the decision of this body. It falls fully within the responsibility of the city to keep moving downtown forward. My concern is that, we're looking at policy changes before there is any finalization for the Downtown Plus strategic plan. I think that's a little dangerous. I think that we need to be fully invested in a plan prior to making any long-term changes for the care and revitalization of our downtown. I just want to make sure that, the administration is best informed, best advised. We've had some of this conversations I have with the mayor and the administrative team based on my past experience with the improvement district and the reauthorization process. That, we really need to be considering thought leaders on shaping that strategic plan and finalizing it, presenting a council body so it gives clarity and direction and vision to execute strategy. And there that needs to be funding behind it, adequate funding, so that we really can do what needs to be done. And so that is being encouraged, and hopefully, again, we're going to continue this conversation next week. That's a cliffhanger there because it absolutely needs to be continued. And the mayor and the managing director and the council president need to be on this conversation. So I think that, anything that comes up between now and next week to talk about this, because we all have experience. We all have experience working either with the improvement district, being downtown, working downtown, having businesses downtown, or enjoying ourselves. Everybody has a valid perspective and point of view on this. So I think we really need to become involved. And that we need to bring that to the table next week. So Marcia, did I see your hand go up for a final comment?
Yeah, and I was just trying to look at what you had said as far as there being a strategic plan in place. It's almost impossible to be able to know how to create a policy when you don't know what the plan is
Right.
to create the policy around. So I've never seen, and as much as we want to move ahead, we also have to move ahead in a mindful type of way. So I think
Mhm.
that's where the discussion should lead us. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? The
Mhm.
creation of the board or the adoption and of the strategic plan. And I just think there's so many pieces that have been missing in what I've reviewed to really look at the reality of downtown.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and you have a lot of experience with this. There needs to be at some level an advisory or steering capacity to work with the administration, the favor of the administration and council body, so that we can move forward on what we're all talking about here. Did I miss a hand before we close this? No? Okay. So, oh,
Johanna.
sorry, Johanna. Yep, go ahead.
And I don't know if this is off topic, but this is why it's so adamant that we learn from our mistakes, right? That we grow from them, and that moving forward, that we have a priority list that we can, even as a group, as council, we can kind of like always check off or stay on top of, because I just always feel that we make a little bit of progress, but then we go all the way back, and that's just my thoughts. I'm just looking forward to a new year and that we can get things aligned. That's all.
It's critical. So we have let's see, that was it. Are we to review the introduction of new ordinances this evening as well? Or was that just pulled from the agenda? We were going to walk through the ordinances for final passage. Is that correct, everybody?
Right.
Okay. Is there anything else on tonight's agenda that I've missed? Okay. Then very briefly, I know Marcia has a comment. I'm going to call for just general open comments before we close the meeting for tonight. Go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, I had initially spoken with both our city solicitor, our council solicitor, the managing director, the council president, to have an executive session tonight. However, looking at the fact that the key parties are no longer or not available, I'm not sure where that would be taking us. I don't know, Frank, whether you have anything you want to add at all at this point?
It's up to the body to decide if you have an executive session, and if you do, we're prepared to provide some information pending upon which you're inquiring. In regards to personnel matters that we're discussing.
Yeah,
now.
it's specifically around personnel matters.
Both the solicitor and I have been briefed by the mayor and the managing director.
Okay.
So
I would-
it's your purview. It's up
Yeah.
to you guys to decide if you want to do that.
Well, I would say, please note that we don't have the council solicitor on the call, and we're ending our time. I've also spoken with Marcia about this a little bit earlier, Marcia. So I think there was a plan for moving forward with your concerns, right?
Yeah, and then Linda has her hand up. I believe you have our council solicitor ready to join us if needed.
Yes, he's on standby.
And so I had been concerned about certain vacancies of positions from a personnel end. Okay. I don't know, Frank, you had something that you spoke with me about. I don't know whether that's something that you want to.
We're prepared to discuss that in executive session because of personnel matter. But yes,
Okay.
there is regarding the mayor's office. Yes, there's an update and we're prepared to discuss that if you require. We're prepared to do that.
Let's go forward, guys.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
All right.
what are you asking at this point? What are we going forward on?
On what Frank's willing to discuss, what he's prepared to talk about.
Well,
Go
I have not received any notice prior to right now from Frank about an executive session. And I spoke with the managing director 30 minutes before the call, and he didn't indicate that the administrative team needed an executive session. And the fact that the managing director, the mayor, and the council president are on this call, I am cautious to in haste call for an executive session on personnel.
We may
me
have
just-
to ask for action. We may have to ask for action next Monday's meeting. Depending on the outcome of our conversation, we may have to take legislative action on a request. And the mayor has just texted me asking me how that's been. I said we haven't had that discussion yet. But
does
I
everybody
can't
have
elaborate too much
prob-
further publicly, but we may have to ask for legislative action next Monday. It's not as, but that's the purpose of giving some background tonight, or we can wait till next Monday. But we may have to take some legislative action on some changes in the mayor's office. That's all. I don't know what else. That's all I could say publicly.
Well, I don't know, because we haven't been really informed of any, has
The
any other
decision was,
counselor?
the decision was
besides-
made this morning. Decisions were made this morning. It just happened. It was just signed off today.
Well, then I
So
think, I think we can wait until Monday so that we have a little bit of time to talk to each other and understand what is needed here. Johanny?
I haven't been made aware of what's going on. But of course, we've been having problems from the very beginning with communication with the administration, and like it is pretty frustrating. So I'm willing to listen to understand what the problem is so that we can move forward, because at the end of the day, we're here. Let's be respectful that we're here, we're committed, and we still have to take government, we still have to take care of business. So that's my position. I'm willing to sit in the executive session.
Okay, Marcia?
And I just want to say, this wasn't at the last minute. I followed proper protocol last Friday, even though I did not contact all of you. I did speak with the council president, okay? And he agreed because of concerns on vacancies with personnel that we still haven't been formally informed about. So that was why I had asked for an executive session.
Okay, so you're asking for an executive session on personnel matters. And so Johanny said she's okay with that, just informally. Donna?
Yeah.
Strat?
Okay,
Michelle? Melissa, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good, fine. Before we move into an executive session, are there any other issues for the good of the body, general public issues?
Wish everybody a happy Christmas.
Happy holidays. That's
Happy
right.
holidays, Christmas, whatever,
That's
Kwanzaa,
all of the
Every-
above.
everything you celebrate.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else? Marcia?
I know I shared the link earlier, but just to let you know that Lynn Nottage has done good for Reading again in the play that's on Broadway now. Clyde's is located in the city of Reading. Donna, you might be interested in that. One of the characters was reading the Reading Eagle on stage, and they did
What's left
have a
of it.
reference. Yeah, well, exactly, but it was still a Reading Eagle, and the pagoda was mentioned as a place where one of the characters was sleeping as a homeless person
Right.
on the hillside of the pagoda. So it is a reality of what happens in Reading, and I did include the link to, if you want to be able to watch it virtually, the live stream tickets can be purchased for Clyde's. So congratulations, Reading. It speaks to our story.
Okay, great. Johanny?
Oh, no, just echoing everyone else, but for the executive session, who's gonna be part of it?
Yeah, so we're ready. Any more general comments that need to be made here? Strat, is your hand up? Strat, is your hand up?
Yeah, I would say Frank
Hold on,
and I,
Can you just hold on, Fred, 1 second? Strat, do you have a comment?
well, we're drifting away from the original proposal here. Is anything going to be permitted, allowed to be brought up? You're going into executive session.
Do
I'm
you have any,
talking about,
yeah,
I'm
do you have
talking about
general comments for this evening?
something
Just,
that took place here in this community, and we as councilmen never knew about it until after the fact. Yet there's people on council that knew about it, what took place with an individual who got fired and everything else, yet it was never brought to our attention. I want to
Well,
know
Brett,
why.
I want you to be careful about personnel issues. So I think that you should direct anything further to the council solicitor before you speak publicly about personnel
fine.
issues.
That's
okay.
fine. Sure.
So that's it for general public comment. So between Frank, who's, I guess, pursuing this on behalf of the mayor, the executive session. Frank, who needs to be on this call?
I would say just the solicitor and myself.
Okay.
Fred,
Everybody
our
else?
solicitor, Fred and myself. For this call, no, it's strictly just to both of us, unless Fred has different insight, but I believe the matter is just concerns just both of us. That's it.
All
I
right,
would like our council solicitor, Mike Dunbar, to also be included.
Right. No, of course.
Okay.
okay,
Just to make
thanks.
sure, because you said, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No, that was just from the administration side. So to
Gotcha.
help Linda clear the room.
all right, Linda, when you're ready.
Thought you were excluding me because I